The Amorous Doctor. Chapter 10. A Nice Conversation. As expected, after looking for two senior officials in patient wards, he found Shenmuqing. The strange thing was that Yi Shuan and her son were not present. Shenmuqing was not asleep. She was watching TV, lying on the bed. Ding Ning was a bit angry. This girl really didn't know how to take care of herself. Staying up late was the most harmful thing to do regarding her disease. From the perspective of traditional Chinese medicine, daytime was yang, which could be cultivated by moving more. Nighttime was yin, which could be cultivated by sleeping. In the extensive and profound Chinese culture, there was a word called jianao. Ao meant repeatedly cooking in water. By staying up late, she was cooking her body. She was also cooking her body's essence, qi, and spirit, which would gradually decrease while doing this. It was just like lighting an oil lamp. As the oil was burning, it decreased, and the light dimmed. When the oil ran out, the light was off. Just as the saying went, one died like the light turned off. Staying up late would lead to the body's yin-yang disharmony, forming a constitution of yin deficiency and yang overabundance. Moreover, the qi would run out like the oil of the lamp. Eventually it would lead to illness. Shenmuqing was weak and feeble in the first place. Her yin and yang were not balanced. Not only her yang was insufficient, but her yin was also weak, not to mention that she had serious heart disease. By staying up late, her viscera could not take a good rest. Also, the toxins could not be decomposed and excreted through her liver and large intestine. So, the toxins would accumulate in her body, causing stagnant movement of qi and blood. Ding Ning could tell the conditions inside her body from the outside. The internal organs would have stagnant movement of qi and blood, deficiency of yin, and overabundance of yang because of her yin-yang disharmony. Therefore, the chances of having angiocardiopathy would rise gradually. So, when Ding Ning pushed the door open, he looked terrible. He thundered, "Have you given up your life? What time is it now? Why are you not sleeping?" Shenmuqing looked at him with surprise, but she immediately felt warm in her heart. She sat up and smiled, saying, "I'm waiting for you." Ding Ning was petrified instantly as his heart was beating madly unsupposed. Flipping was the right word to describe him, and also the feeling arising spontaneously in him. At noon, he just focused on saving her and did not pay attention to her appearance at all. But at this moment, he finally saw her clearly. He swore that he had never seen such a beautiful woman. She leaned lazily on the pillow. Her black hair cascaded over the pillow, which made people want to take care of her. On her delicate and impeccable melon-shaped face, her brow looked like distant mountains, her eyes were limpid, her nose and mouth were cute, and her teeth were white like shells. The large-sized hospital dress could not hide her beautiful body at all. From different angles of view, her bosom could vary from mountains to peaks. The most seductive thing to him was that the hospital dress was not buttoned in case of the dress touching the needles on her chest. When she sat up, the thin quilt slipped down, revealing a huge area of snow-white, seductive skin between the hospital dress. As a little virgin boy full of sap, this view had a strong visual impact on him. He suddenly felt warmth in his nose, and blood embarrassedly bled out. Shenmuqing finally found out that her skin was exposed when she immediately blushed, and hurriedly lifted the quilt to cover her body. Ding Ning's nosebleed became even more serious. He looked up to stop the bleeding and said awkwardly in a red face, Sorry, I didn't mean it. It's all right. People say that in a doctor's eyes, there was no gender difference. You can just take me as a male patient. Shinmuching lowered her head and whispered. Her face could not be more blushed. Fortunately, after Ding Ning's superpower was awakened, his senses were far superior to those of normal people. Otherwise, he could not hear what she was saying. Were you a man? How can men in this world survive from you? Ding Ning said inwardly. After he steadied himself, he played the meridian's severing hand on his nose to seal his source of guilt. The nosebleed miraculously stopped immediately. Shinmuching looked at this scene with glamorous light flashing in her eyes. She now became more convinced to her intuition that Ding Ning was unusual and would definitely save her from her disease. Ding Ning ran to the washroom to wash his face and let out the evil fire within. He then shamefacedly walked to the ward and said, Miss, I come to tell you that the silver needles should stay for 12 hours. Otherwise, your disease will reoccur. Shinmuching meekly nodded and said, Dr. Ding, my name is Shinmuching. You can just call me Muching. Ding Ning scratched the back of his head in bewilderment and said, I'd better call you Miss Shin. Shinmuching said disapprovingly, Whatever you like. By the way, Miss Shin, did you just say that you were waiting for me? Did you know that I'll come? Ding Ning suddenly remembered what Shinmuching said before and asked curiously. Yes. Your needles are still on my body, and none of us dares to pull them out. So I figure that you will come to me. Shinmuching smiled shyly, and then said apologetically, I'm sorry. My brother is too reckless. Please don't blame him, okay? I apologize for him. You're two different beings. You did nothing wrong, so you don't need to apologize. But he is a man, and he has to be responsible for anything he did. Is it that hard for him to say sorry? Sorry, I can't accept your apology. Ding Ning looked serious and said, When it came to the attitude toward life, he was very persistent and even a bit stubborn. His father had too much influence on him. A man should stand upright on his two legs between heaven and earth, and he must have the courage to admit their mistakes. Shinmuching looked at him with some embarrassment and said, My brother inherits my father's bad temper. His is so stubborn that he had never apologized to anyone. It doesn't matter. I'm stubborn too, but it's my principle of being a human, and I'll never violate it. I believe he will apologize to me eventually. After Ding Ning calmed down, he soon switched to Dr. mode again and patiently talked about the disadvantages of staying up late. Now, he could basically ignore the most beautiful face and body he had ever seen. After bypassing the topic of making Shinmuching apologize, Ding Ning was surprised to find that Shinmuching was extremely talkative and had a wide range of knowledge. She could say something about any industry. She was not a vase but a clever and talented woman. He was supposed to come by, tell her the time to remove the needles, and walk away. But now, after a little chit-chat, he had a feeling of regretting not to have known her before. On the other side, Shinmuching was even more shocked than he was. Since childhood, she was clever and adopted an elite education, plus the disease, leaving her the only hobby of reading books at home. It was normal for her to have a wide range of vision and knowledge. But Ding Ning just looked like one of those grassroots. It was impossible for him to take an elite education. She thought that he was only skilled in medicine. But it had never come to her that he also knew a lot. He knew many things in astronomy, geography, politics, history, characters, customs, geomancy, and customs. He even knew his onions in Western history and culture. No matter what topic they talked about, he had incisive sayings and unique opinions, which were humorous, wise, and in-depth. She had learned a lot. She had to admit that although Ding Ning's thoughts were somewhat unconstrained, they were persuasive and very logical. It meant that he had understood those things and he was not pretending to understand everything and speaking carelessly. If it weren't for her brother, who had conducted research on his background, she should have suspected that Ding Ning was a son from a wealthy family trying to get close to her by pretending to be a grassroot. Ding Ning's erudition made Shenmuqing's eyes shine brighter and flash with extraordinary splendor. In normal conditions, she should have been tired after such a long conversation. But now, she was not sleepy at all. Instead, she became more and more spirited. She had never met such a person who shared so many common topics. She really wished that time could stop at the moment so that they could talk forever. They had a happy conversation and shared many understandings and thoughts on many things. It might not be appropriate to say that they were of one mind, but it could be said that they cherished the same ideals and followed the same path. However, whatever they talked about, they subconsciously avoided Shenmuqing's disease as if it was an untouchable minefield. They all knew that once they step on the minefield, things would go back to where it started and their happy conversation would end, which was not the situation they wanted. Therefore, both of them did not mention her disease with tacit understandings. In the middle of the night, a senior official's inpatient ward on the 13th floor burst out waves of light laughter from time to time. "Oh my God! How is this possible?" In the meeting room of the hospital committee, John Mack shouted in surprise with the latest report in his hand. Even the fake foreign devil was shocked like this. The others became curious and got close to him to look at the report. Holy! How can it be? Not only the expanded part of the heart had returned to normal, but also the focus of infection was controlled. This is incredible. Miracle. This is actually a miracle in the history of medicine. Is this really conducted by a young man? This is so unbelievable. Had you taken the wrong report? Gosh! If it's real, this young lad is indeed amazing. One after another, the famed doctors were shocked after reading the report. Some of them questioned, some exclaimed, some admired, some doubted if the content was falsified, and some suspected the wrong report. No matter what, these famous doctors were experts in their professions, and they could indeed tell from the report that the 7 needles were very effective. This made Shenmuyang feel good, and for no reason, she now had some good feelings toward Ding Ning. That kid really is capable. Look at these highly conceited experts, he even impressed them like this. Yu Shulan was shocked upon seeing the response of these famous doctors. She just planned to gather them to have a consultation and come up with a solution of surgery. But she had never expected that, eventually, her daughter's disease was tied to that young man who was neither obsequious nor arrogant, and regarded his dignity as life. She felt both depressed and exciting. Even these doctors admired Ding Ning. Was he really capable of curing her daughter? If so, she had to change her strategy. She had to lower her stance and invite him to cure her daughter with sincerity. Face was indeed very important to her. But in front of a fragile life, especially it was her precious daughter, she could lower everything.